it's very sad indeed. Even after all that work, Pearl didn't make it. So I'll have to keep an eye on Captain Jack and make sure that he's okay before I find him a new mate.
Well, since I've made some of those changes, even though Pearl didn't survive, Captain Jack continues to do well, even though it's been a couple of weeks after Pearl had passed on. So I obviously caught her too late, but some extra measures I'm taking. I am going to sanitize everything that comes in contact with their food. So I have some soapy water here. I'm going to rinse the net that I use to rinse out the shrimp before I soak it in salt water. I am going to take my rigid tubing and the attached hose that I use for cleaning out or vacuuming each night the detritus that accumulates on the sponges and tank floor, and I'm going to get this cleaned with soap as well. So I'm letting soapy water run through here. Need to rinse it. And since I do the vacuuming only once a day, that has plenty of time to dry before the next evening. This is the little server or pitcher that I use to fill with salt water from the tank and to let the shrimp sit in. So this is going to get cleaned with soapy water as well. And then when I take a scoop of that water, I do pour it into the feeding tube. So if you've seen any of the videos where I use the tube to drop the frozen shrimp down into a feeding station, you might recognize this. And then I rinse this off, and I rinse off the server here, and then I dry everything. The net will have to air dry itself, but it always does because I feed the seahorses twice a day, and so that space of time is plenty for it to dry in between. I'm going to dry off my feeding tube. I'm going to dry off my server that I use to pour the water full of shrimp down. And then I'm going to dry off the inside of my feeding tube. Let me get a smaller piece to get it in there. See if I can get this. Get the paper towel started in there, and then I just push it through with the rigid tubing to get it all the way through and give it a chance to dry. And everything dries out pretty well, and just a light amount of soap is just about perfect, so I'm not introducing poisonous soap into the tank. So this is an extra measure I'm taking. I hope that helps. And there's one more thing that I'm doing to have better luck when I acquire another female for Captain Jack. One final change that I'm making is monitoring and reducing the water temperature the best that I can. Since Pearl's passing, I've learned that this subspecies of northern erectus seahorses were raised in temperatures between 71 and 74 degrees, and I know that the tank had easily gotten up to 76 or 78, and that may not sound like a big difference, but apparently seahorses are very, very sensitive to temperature changes. And if they're used to those lower temperatures, not only can higher temperatures cause them stress, but they will not be accustomed to the more rapid rate of bad bacterial growth that might come from things that are building up into the filter, and any leftover food that hangs in the tank. It just increases the reproduction rate of that bacteria. So one of the things I've been doing, because it's still pretty hot here, we're in our summer season, I've been leaving the lid, or the first part or front part of the lid, up and folded over, so there's more oxygen exchange and more opportunity for water to evaporate. I'm really happy that I do have aeration in both corners of the tank, in addition to flow from the return of the filter and the return of the protein skimmer. I've actually only been turning on the power head as I get ready to do a quick vacuum at night, because the more electrical equipment that you have on, the more heat that it will generate in the water. And actually, Captain Jack doesn't really seem to care for the turbulence that the additional power head seems to create. So I do turn on the power head right before I'm getting ready to vacuum the tank for the night, and it blows out any debris that might be sitting underneath the coral pieces and just lets me see what else needs to be vacuumed. I'm also monitoring the temperature very closely. And here, this is just a simple thermometer, but it looks like I'm sitting right about 75 degrees. Now, I wanted to make sure that this thermometer was accurate. It's kind of nice because it's inexpensive, but it's magnetic. So that means it doesn't adhere with a suction cup. It's easily movable. It doesn't leave any permanent marks on the acrylic of the aquarium. But to confirm that this is pretty accurate, I did purchase a high precision thermometer, and I'm gonna go ahead and do a test to show what the actual temperature is. This is actually a thermometer that is used, I'm just taking the cap off here. It's actually a thermometer that's used to take temperature of food, but it also measures temperature of liquids. So I just turn on the switch, and it is on, and then I just hold it in the water for a few seconds. It looks like the temperature is 74.8, and that is pretty darn close to what I'm seeing on this less expensive thermometer. So I like that I have a fairly accurate thermometer that hangs where I can easily see large numbers and the range that the temperature is in. But it's nice to have this precision thermometer too, in case I have something I want to check it against. This thermometer was not that expensive. I was able to get it for less than $20. Right now it's reading the air temperature, so that's why it looks like it's going down low. But between keeping down the temperature, monitoring it, making sure that the lower temperature is in the range that the northern erectus seahorses are the most comfortable in, and preventing the more rapid growth of bad bacteria that can cause infection, and then not sterilizing but sanitizing all of the materials that I use for feeding. I'm hoping I have solved my problem. Like I said, Captain Jack is looking really good. His color is excellent. One thing that I've noticed since I've made the changes, his breathing does not seem as labored Actually, it doesn't seem labored at all. I noticed that Pearl and Captain Jack, their gills were moving rapidly and harshly, but you can see now Captain Jack, his gills, they're very slow and methodical. So he's at a very comfortable rate, and he's probably feeling well. Another thing that I notice as a difference is that his color looks just beautiful. He's nice and bright. It seemed like at one point Pearl and Captain Jack were hiding quite a bit, and they were both staying very dark in color. And sometimes that can mean something's not right in the aquarium when the seahorses are hiding a lot and they remain dark in color. Also, he's been coming out a lot more, swimming around, and his appetite is really good, which is a big sign of how a seahorse is feeling. It did seem like Pearl was eating a lot less. Sometimes it was really hard to tell because I work during the day during a regular work week, Monday through Friday, and so if she was eating, there were times I probably couldn't see it, but she had to be eating a lot less. But anyway, things are going really well. I'm going to wait a little bit longer and make sure Captain Jack is nice and healthy. And after that, we're going to go ahead and try to replace a partner for him, because maybe it's my interpretation, but he just seems so sad without having a partner. Very interesting observation. I have been able to get the aquarium tank water to dip down below 74 degrees. It's actually about 73.4 right now when I checked with the new Precision Digital thermometer. It actually was a discovery, inadvertent. We had spilled some water and we were trying to dry it up with a fan on the floor to prevent it from seeping down as much. And so here we have a little fan, but it also happens to be blowing on the canister filter, the aquarium pump that is providing air to the sponge filters. And I also mentioned that I have left the front part of the lid up. And interestingly, this is the lowest temperature that I've had in the aquarium all summer. So somehow the fan is cooling things enough down below that it's having an impact above. I also mentioned that I hadn't really been using the power head as much because I wasn't seeing the benefit from it in the way that I expected. I'm doing pretty well with getting things vacuumed out each evening, but I did notice when I let the power head run for longer, even when it's breaking the surface of the water, the temperature went up 2 degrees, which is the highest it's been in a little over a week. So now I'm only turning on the power head as I'm getting ready to vacuum out the tank for the night, just to get out anything that might be caught underneath the aquarium decor until I do my weekly water change. Captain Jack is doing very well. I did a really large water change today. I'm going to be cleaning out the canister filter more often, especially now that I figured out I don't have to remove the hoses from the back of the tank every time. I can just turn off the flow lever after I unplug the device, and then I can just disconnect everything from the filter and then rinse everything out that's in there. I did come across a couple of articles that talked about people who had similar problems that I had with Pearl, and it was very similar in the scenario that all the water parameters that were measurable were in excellent ranges, and mysteriously seahorses would get sick, whether it be the tail or the tail stiffening or rotting or any other kind of ailments. There was a pattern. Whenever the temperature increased in the aquarium above 74 degrees, that's when problems started. And one article that I read commented that it seemed that the bacteria growth that impacts the very sensitive and primitive immune system of seahorses, that bacteria multiplied exponentially to the point where seahorses could not fight it off. So I think I may have solved my problem between cleaning out my canister filter more often and keeping that temperature low, and I'm hoping it will stay much lower naturally as we start to transition into fall in my part of the world. And pretty soon it looks like we'll be able to safely get a new mate for Captain Jack.